Good afternoon, everybody. I think we're going to just let the audience fill up here for a moment. I'm Ariel Kalil. Nice to have you all here. I'm just watching the participants exit the waiting room and join us here, and I will begin momentarily. Okay. Michelle, I think I'm going to begin.
Sounds good.
So welcome, everybody. As I said, I'm Ariel Kalil. I am just delighted that you are here to attend this webinar. We are the Behavioral Insights in Parenting Lab at the University of Chicago. I am the Daniel Levin Professor of Public Policy at the Harris School, and I am the co-founder and co-director of the BIP Lab. We are super excited to get a chance to share with you today our what we know and how we are thinking about how best to harness the power of technology for children's learning at home. So before we dive in, I just wanted to let you know who you will be hearing from today. I'm going to start us off with some overview remarks about what is our perspective and where does it come from. Then we're going to hear from two of our fabulous PhD students in the lab, Rohan Shah and Noah Liu, who are going to share some details from our recent randomized control trials. And finally, Michelle Michelini, who is the host of this call and the executive director of the BIP lab, is going to give some concluding remarks and tell you where we are going next. Just a few housekeeping things. This call is being recorded. Chat is disabled for participants. So what we would love for you to do instead is if you have questions, please drop them into the Q&A icon that you will see at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And we are going to leave plenty of time for Q&A at the end, but we're not going to stop with questions along the way. So never fear, your questions are going to be gathered in the Q&A reservoir as we go along, and we're going to get to as many of them as possible when we finish. So with that, let's get started. So we have two facts that motivate our work at the lab. And in fact, these two facts have motivated our work for the 10 years of the lab's life, and I am guessing are going to continue to motivate us as we move along. This is the first fact. What you see here is the average cognitive test score for children at different ages whose mothers have different levels of education. So children whose mothers have the least amount of education are represented here with the yellow triangles, and cognitive test scores of their counterparts whose mothers are college graduates are represented here with the maroon diamonds. Two things are relevant here. First is that the gaps in test scores by mother's education open early in childhood and change almost not at all throughout children's schooling years. This means that children from disadvantaged backgrounds reach adulthood with fewer skills than their more advantaged counterparts. But what this really does for us, and I hope for you too, is direct you to the importance of the home environment, because these gaps by maternal education are present long before children enter formal schooling. So this is fact number one that drives us to focus on how can we best support learning in the home environment. Next slide. The second fact is a complement to the first fact. And this also drives home the importance of the home environment because it shows you where children are spending their time. If we take all the hours that children are awake from the time they're born to the time they turn 18, almost 90% of that time is spent with their family, by which I mean their caregivers, their parents, or in environments that are selected by those parents and caregivers. So again, this just points us towards our strong belief that a focus on the home learning environment is key to narrowing those gaps in child skill. Next slide. So, as you know, the topic of today is technology and how technology can minimize barriers to parent investments in the home in children's skill development. In other words, how can technology help to support parent engagement in children's learning? We have observed that in the world of ed tech, especially when we use those words ed tech, most people think of what we're calling a preschool perspective. Most people think of ed tech that's either used in preschool classrooms themselves, or when we look at what ed tech is available, it looks a lot like bringing preschool into the home, both in the features and the goals and the design of those products. At the BIP lab, we take a very different perspective. We want to promulgate a parenting perspective on ed tech. And the reason we do this is because we think our work shows convincingly that ed tech helps parents. It helps minimize the barriers to parent engagement. In this way, ed tech is not a substitute for parents. It's not substituting for parents' time by bringing the preschool environment into the home. It's a complement to parents. It is working together with parents to help them engage in their children's learning at home. Before I turn it over to Rowan, I'm going to just briefly tell you about 5 ways we think technology works in this fashion. And all of this, as I say, comes from the evidence that we have produced in our lab. So first, technology can help manage parents' tendency to procrastinate, what behavioral economists call present bias, by reminding parents to engage in their children, bringing learning interactions to top of mind with tools like goal setting and positive feedback and reminders. We can make sure that learning engagement happens habitually. Second, technology has the power to provide parents with feedback, with accurate information of their children's skill development in real time. This is hugely important because many parents have inaccurate beliefs about how their children are doing. Where are they in the distribution of skills? And these inaccuracies in understandings drive how much parents do spend time. So technology can be both informative and motivating by sharing with parents the progress that their kids are making as learning happens. Next, simply by virtue of helping parents get started and keep going, technology can help strengthen parents' identity as an important person in the child's learning process, empowering parents that their kids are learning, that this time is important, and sustaining habits over the course of a lifetime, really. Technology further can help to overcome parent anxiety. It can boost parents' self-efficacy by coaching and strengthening things like parents' growth mindset, can send messages that remind parents that it doesn't have to be perfect, that there's no one right way to help children learn. And in that way, helping parents feel like what they're doing matters and that they have the power to make a difference. And finally, through all the many features of technology, parent-child learning interactions can be fun, they can be efficient and habitual, which is a word I've said over and over again, because what really matters most to us is not that the time spent is astronomical in number, not that the time spent is perfect in nature, but rather just that time is spent routinely, most days of the week for every week of the year. So this summarizes again what we mean when we say a parent perspective on technology and children's learning. And now I'm going to turn it over to Rohan Shah to give some initial results from some of our randomized controlled trials. Rohan.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rohan. And yeah, today I'm going to talk about CAPER, which is a study that we did children and parents engaged in reading. And it was an 11-month study designed to boost parent-child reading and child literacy skills. So this study built on a previous study we did, PACT, Parents and Children Together. Now, about PACT, that study, what it did was it measured accurately how much parents were reading. Self-reports of how much parents are reading are often reliable. It's hard to remember exactly how much you read. And so what PACT really did was it utilized technology by giving all the parents a tablet, and that tablet had an app with a lot of digital books. And what that did was that allowed us to measure how much parents were reading. Now in CAPER, we did something even more, longer term. It was 11 months instead of just 6 weeks. And more importantly, in CAPER, we actually were able to measure the effectiveness of the tablet itself. So as I mentioned, there was a library in PACT. There was also a library in CAPER. We actually built our own digital app with over 200 books in English and Spanish. One thing about this tablet, this digital library app was the only app on the tablet that parents could access. So they couldn't access any other apps or the internet, but that app with over 200 books is really the driving feature of this tablet here. And it was really optimized to have parents engage with the app. So it had messages. Parents got reminder messages. So some parents got messages that were, just these sort of reminders. Don't forget to read to your kid today. Other parents also got messages that were goal setting, where it gave feedback to the parents about how much they read, including goals for how much they should read the following week if their goal is to keep increasing that reading amount. So what we find is that when we look at the literacy skills then of the parents who didn't receive the tablet versus the parents who did receive the tablet, we see that the no digital library group scored a 40 on our test versus the group that received this digital library 11 months later scored a 46. So this 6-point difference is actually pretty huge, because in this context, that refers to about a year's worth of learning here. So in an 11-month window, the group that received the tablets learned 2 years worth in that 1 year, is the way to interpret this. So there was a substantial amount of improvement in literacy skills just from receiving this tablet for about a year. Now, if we add messages, though, to the tablet, that didn't actually increase the literacy skills. So this really then drove our agenda then for what we're doing next. It's inspiring our future work, because now we're interested in learning how exactly and why does this happen? Why is it that access to this digital library vastly increased literacy skills? And so part of the reason might be that you have access to a lot more books. It's more convenient to give somebody 200 books on a tablet than to drop off 200 books at their doorstep. And so that might be a reason. Another reason, though, might be that parents might engage with the technology in a different way than they might with non-digital books. And so that's actually Noah is going to talk a little bit next about how parents engage in the lab with technology versus non-digital materials. So I'll give it off to Noah now.
Thank you, Rowan. Hello, everyone. I'm Noah Liu, and I'll introduce you to our math project, About Time. So About Time was a lab experiment followed by a 6-month intervention. It is designed to evaluate the effectiveness of early math learning apps in improving children's math skills. It replicated and expanded on a previous BIP math intervention. It's called MPACT. So in the previous study, we showed that there's a significant improvement in the math scores of disadvantaged children by simply providing them with digital tablets loaded with math apps. And now the About Time project, we replicated MPAC findings in the field. But on top of that, we explored what benefits technology can really bring to children in a controlled lab setting. So today I'll start with the field results and the combined insights of About Time impact first. Then we'll dive into the findings in the lab experiment. So for our field experiment, we invited parents and children from a diverse pool of preschools to join our project, and we put them into 3 groups. So one group of families, they stick to the usual routine. Another group of families, they got digital math tablets loaded with math apps, like the picture on the left side. And then we have a third group who received an analog game kit filled with hands-on math activities. It's a picture on the right side. You see, we send the families a box full of high-quality hands-on math activities. And now we can dive into the results 6 months after we provided families with these materials. So first off, for our advantaged children, the math skill gain was not evident. However, we as the BIP team, we're very encouraged by the promising outcomes among our disadvantaged children. So among the disadvantaged children, as the first bar show, the children who following the usual routine, they maintain their position at the 23rd national percentile for the math performance. However, for the second group, the children who engage in analog math games, they demonstrated a similar proficiency despite the material. They're at the 22nd national percentile. But here is what the impact stands out. The group with digital tablets showed a substantial improvements, now positioned at the 26th national percentile. So this increase is the same as packing a whole actual year of skill growth compared to a typical Head Start Center. And this comparison is according to a study called the Head Start Impact Study. And furthermore, we uncover an interesting trend among disadvantaged children. That is, there's a positive correlation between math app usage and skill development during our 6 months intervention period. So simply put, like this positive correlation, it means the more a child engages with math apps, the more skills they gain during the 6 months window. Because of this observation, it prompts a very natural question to ask: why is technology proving to be effective in our context? For that question, to unravel why it is the case, we organized a very special session with parents and children. So like, picture this. Parents and their children, they enter a room for 15 minutes playtime with math learning materials. They will either play with a digital tablet or analog games. We videotaped their interactions with their children and meticulously tally up the math words and phrases exchanged during these sessions. So the question is, why are we counting the math words and the phrases? Well, it's because there are several longitudinal studies in psychology show that children who are exposed to a rich vocabulary of math-related words, they tend to have a better math performance over time. And freeing children, especially their efforts, will boost their confidence and motivation in learning math. So by combining the positive reinforcement and the fostering of supportive environment, children can substantially improve their skills. So here are a few examples of the math words and phrases we captured during the sessions. The math talk can be like, there are 3 monkeys. I can see 5 stars and 1 moon in the sky. And for phrases, like, as I said, like, especially phrase the efforts, we saw, good job, you're amazing, way to go. Things like that. So then our analysis of the recorded videos reveals a very compelling trend. When parents and children engage with math app together, there's a notable 20% increase in the usage of math words. So to put this 20% in a context, this increase, 20%, equals to an additional 20 math words, which is akin to what children typically experience in half a day. And this half a day benchmark comparison is indicated by a study from the Chicago professor Susan Levine and her co-authors. And moreover, when children who play with their parents and math apps, they receive more frequent freezes from parents and also from math apps. And also, like, in fact, these freezes children heard doubled when interacting with parents and apps. So we believe that the increase of the math word and the more frequent freezes, they will all play a vital role in enhancing children's math learning experiences so that to build up their math skills. However, things is not completely perfect. But despite all the numerous benefits that the math app can offer in our study, we have a very significant challenge. That is, in our field intervention, we have 6 months of the intervention period. By week 20 of our intervention, we observe a staggering 78% drop in the average math usage. So if they don't use the math app, then they cannot enjoy all the benefit in the long term. Therefore, this decline prompts an important question we want to answer. That is, how can children sustain their engagement with education technology so that they can fully get the benefits we all just mentioned? Well, on that note, I'll pass it to Michelle to talk about this issue and more.
Thanks, Noah. Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle. Now that we know that access to learning tech at home can boost children's learning in both literacy and math, I'll talk to you a little bit about what this all means. Pull it all together. We find in about time that access is uniquely beneficial for low-income kids while having no effect on higher-income kids' skill development. And this finding is important because it indicates the potential for learning tech to narrow inequality in children's skill development. Our data also show that learning tech reduces barriers to usage by design. Kids like and are drawn to technology, which means they use it more than non-tech for learning if given the access. We do often ask ourselves why it is that tech gets eyeballs and works so well, but that's probably a question and a discussion for another day. So where do we go from here? How do we start scaling what we've learned? First, we need to solve for the problem of equalizing access. So low-income families with young children have access to devices, the internet, and high-quality learning tech. And then once access is resolved, we should turn our attention to increasing persistence to fix the drop-off problem we've observed that Noah showed you. In fact, we observe the problem of drop-off in virtually every program, so this isn't exactly unique to technology programs. What's next at the BIP lab focuses squarely on these issues of scaling, starting with access. So schools are one important vehicle for expanding access. In our second phase of About Time, generously funded by Karina Initiatives, we're going to survey educators and school leaders to understand the landscape of tech take-up. We'll learn about educator beliefs and barriers to take up across diverse schools to measure the problem of unequal access in schools. And then we'll see if there are ways we can mitigate existing barriers in light touch ways. For instance, by delivering information to educators similar to what's in this presentation, but probably packaged a little differently. However, our studies were done with preschool families, and we know more than half of low-income children don't attend preschool. Chat to Learn, generously funded by the McCormick Foundation, is a resource we provide to families that's informed by our research. And it was designed specifically to reach families who aren't in preschools. It's a low-tech, interactive program delivered by text to maximize accessibility and delivers open-ended conversation starters to parents, questions that spark kids' imagination and curiosity. So rather than dictating to parents how to be their child's first teacher, which proves ineffectual, Chat to Learn promotes learning through conversation, skills like self-regulation, storytelling, and critical thinking. We originally partnered with the state of Illinois to deliver Chat to Learn and recommend departments of education everywhere to support low barrier programs that can feasibly be delivered directly to the families who need the resource the most. We have a couple other plans for future research that I'll just mention briefly. First, we do plan to address the persistence issue and scaling tech for learning at home. We also want to learn how tech can optimize the quality and quantity of parent-child learning interactions. And we want to know if tech can influence curiosity, children's curiosity. In fact, we're fielding our first study focused on curiosity right now, which stay tuned for more on that. Lastly, here's how we can work together. First, we rely on institutional community partners to make our research possible. Right now, we're looking to partner with a wide range of preschool and elementary school networks across the country to conduct our educator survey. We're also looking for subsidized preschool networks in Illinois who want to partner with us to make Chat to Learn accessible to as many disadvantaged families as possible in the state. Second, both research and building and scaling tools requires funding. We want to pursue each of the research questions I mentioned, and we also want to give Chat to Learn an upgrade or like technological makeover to make it sustainable and increase engagement and persistence. So finally, we invite techies to partner with us on building research-informed tools and on improving and evaluating existing tools. We're excited to be moving toward more partnerships to integrate our research findings into tech platforms, ranging from SMS messaging to generative AI-enabled content, all designed to better engage parents and children in learning. So that concludes our presentation. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're really eager to take some time now to receive feedback and answer questions. Sorry, I'm just opening the Q&A so that I can see the questions. So Rukmini asked, to what extent can we apply these findings to EdTech in general or to the use of any EdTech products at home? Maybe I'll pass that question to Ariel.
Yeah, I'll just share some thoughts. This is the question we ask ourselves a lot, and I think it does come down to quality. I mean, EdTech is a big word. It's a big umbrella, and there's a lot that might fit under that umbrella. We spend a lot of time vetting these apps and pilot testing the technology that we are interested in. And one of the main things that we look for is that the digital tools spark parental engagement as well. As I said, we're looking for tools that coach parents and that complement parents, not that substitute for parents. So I would say that our findings are, it's hard to say how, I don't think they would be applicable to any old ed tech because the features of the ones we choose are special in that way. I will say that the question of quality is a really big one and that we're not sure how parents judge quality, what parents think of when they think that something is high quality, or what teachers who might make recommendations for what parents might use at home. How do teachers understand quality? How does anybody keep up with ed tech and innovations in ed tech? That's a super big question, and it's one of the things we're going to be looking at in our next study about time 2.
Great. The committee also asked, since I see another question from her below, did we notice a persistence issue with the reading intervention? And the answer is yes. Maybe I'll pass that to Rowan to give some more detail on that.
Yeah, so there definitely was also a decline in the amount that parents read over that 11-month window. And so, yeah, I think definitely one big question is how do we keep that engagement up? One interesting thing about that, though, is that even the follow-up test that we did was the full 11 months later, which means, and there was still a huge gain 11 months later, which means a lot of that gain must have been from that initial time that parents spent on the app reading. And so that initial, either that initial gap, lasted, and even a year later, some of that literacy skills, effect persisted, even though the reading on the app didn't persist. Another potential thing is maybe at some point, parents, they started reading more on the digital, non-digital books that we wouldn't be able to measure how much they're reading. But if they consistently read more, maybe the digital technology got them to read a little bit more. And then maybe that switched into either different apps that we weren't looking at or non-digital materials. But it might have also been that they did actually keep reading, just not on what we measured. But in either case, it's important still that a year later, the literacy skills were higher for the group, even that, that read a lot more during those first couple of months.
I want to just add to that. Thank you, Rohan. But I do want to just underscore that the problem with drop-off and diminishing engagement over time is not unique to technology. It's human nature. People start things and then they quit them, and the beginning is always more exciting than the middle or the end. So we're really trying to understand this. And for us, one of the exciting things about technology is that it has some special features that might help to mitigate this drop-off. So the possibility of refreshing content on a regular basis so that something is always novel and new. The possibility of different ways of presenting information to parents, different kinds of messaging, different hooks and tricks that technology and technological tools have the possibility of incorporating by design. This is, how do you keep things fresh is an age-old question of human nature, and we are inspired by the possibility that technology can solve some of that problem.
Great. I have a few other questions that are related to the RCTs. So one is, did the children who use digital math games play with them alone or with an adult? And related to the About Time study, can we share the names of the apps that were used in the study?
Yeah, I'm happy to. Yeah, I'm happy to take the answer. Well, first of all, for the lab experiment, we did not analyze the scenario where children play with the apps alone. The main reason is we think in the real world, the parents and children, their engagement time is not only improving the skills, it's beyond that bonding time. So we think that reflects the real world the most. We view technology as more like complements to support parents to more engage in that interaction instead of substitute parents to let kids play with the tablet alone. So we didn't. I don't think that is our primary interest to understand to what extent can tablet time substitute the parents' time. That's the first question. Second question about the math apps. We validated tons of apps, and we landed on 4 apps in the end. I can definitely share the names. They are Fun Expected Math, Montessori Preschool, endless number and math tangle.
Excellent. We have a lot of questions about our theories on persistence.
Michelle, before you go on, Michelle, I wanted to just add one more thing to what Noah said. So we didn't have time to show you the results of the About Time 1 on parent engagement. But one important finding was that the app condition also increased the amount of self-reported time by parents doing math with their kids. So that gets even more to Noah's answer about the apps appear to engage children and parents alike, which makes it, again, even more exciting. Apps, the features that apps have, and these math apps in particular, seem to appeal to parents. And I think Rowan is going to jump in and answer.
Oh no, I was gonna say I'll also start answering some of the questions that were submitted via typing, because so that
Perfect.
we do a little bit of both. Yeah.
Did you want to address some of these questions, Rowan, we can all chime in, but on the persistence question. So a lot of tech programs have struggled with drop off. What are some of our thoughts on addressing this fundamental issue, and what do we think is causing this drop off problem in general?
Yeah, so I think that goes a little bit with what we were talking about just now about how, it's not unique to technology. Even for many things, there's like a novelty effect, right? When something is new, you do a little bit more of that, things tend to die off a little bit. But yeah, I think it's unclear. I think that in general, I don't have a good answer to what's the grand solution to how do you get people to keep engaging in something. But I do think that either whether it's, you keep seeing what works and what are some other things that can help at least a little bit with the persistence. I think that's like certainly something to look for. But even in general, even if this is like a series of temporary things that students do, maybe they engage 1 year with this, and then next year it's a totally different thing, then it's a different thing. Maybe it's something like that use the novelty to our advantage to try to get kids more engaged over the years. One other question I see here, did we not see an improvement for high income families, or what do we think about that? So there, I think for the reading sample, we only focused on low income population, so we can't say anything about the high income families. For the math, I think, we only see the positive, strong effect for the low income samples. I think the big reason is because, and even if we were to do this with reading, the high income families have access to technology in a way that the low-income families don't. And so even the control group, we can't really force the control group to say, hey, you can't use technology, right? And so if the counterfactual control group is still using technology that we're not monitoring, then it makes sense that we would see no difference between treatment and control for the high-income families. And so it doesn't mean that the apps aren't necessarily useful, just that our design doesn't let us measure that because we can't really control, what they do outside of this.
Great. Michelle, I wanted to answer this question about external validity because I really love that question, and we talk about that a lot in the lab. So the question is about maybe the people who are participating in our trial are different from those who aren't. And that is a fair statement. These are experiments, so the internal validity is 100%. We don't have, we are randomizing people into treatment and control, and the groups are not contaminated. But it is totally true that we rely on a sample. I mean, our studies, we didn't mention this, we have about 1,000 people in any given one of these studies, but these are families who want to be in a research study, who volunteered to complete surveys and are willing to be randomized into a treatment or control group. And it is totally plausible that they are different in some way from people who are not so motivated. we are, the solution to that for us is to try to scale this up to as great a number of participants as possible and see if the results hold. So is the 80,000th person who signs up for this program different from the 800th person? And of course, this question of whether once you scale up a program, does it still work in the same way as it once did originally, is paramount. But we hope that by working with states and pushing out our products to and our programs to as big a group as possible, we can make more headway on that.
Right. I'll also add to that. I mean, this isn't really a point about external validity per se, but there is a way that we set up our tech for distribution and research, and the tech is locked down. I mean, I think Rowan mentioned this, but first of all, we vet apps for the highest quality and to be targeted towards the skill development of the skill that we're measuring, and then we lock the devices down so that only those programs can be accessed, and they're usually like ad-free. There's no barriers, right? Like we strip all the login barriers, and there's no option of kids exiting, right, the app to use YouTube and browse the web. And there may be an effect of doing that that contributes to the success of our technology. Yeah, and I think that's something that should be considered for like scaling up, right? Like we may just need more sort of integrated solutions that are locked down, and that aren't sort of quote unquote watered down with other options for kids.
So Michelle, I see another question in here that's super interesting to me, and that is about whether any of these programs might affect relationships or social emotional outcomes in addition to academic ones. That is also at the top of our list of questions. And in part, it's because we in our lab are thinking a lot about the difference between what researchers called constrained skills or constrained skill development versus unconstrained or open-ended learning. A lot of the tools and approaches that are promulgated, especially to low-income parents, focus on the former. That is, they are trying to inspire parents to do things like help their children learn to count to 50 or help children learn the alphabet or the beginning sounds of letters. We think there's a lot more that goes into school readiness than those kind of constrained academic skills. And we are super interested in whether technology and these kind of interventions can promote what researchers call unconstrained skills. That is, interactions and questions that parents might pose to children for which there is no one right answer, that simply take children's imaginations wherever they may go, that also help to build closeness and bonding between parents and children by helping to inspire parents' identity as a parent and share their own feelings and experiences with children. We think these kind of reciprocal interactions around these socio-emotional skills, or skills like curiosity, creativity, complex thinking, are equally, if not more important than that other set of skills, which frankly, most children will learn when they get to kindergarten anyway. So that is really the frontier of what we are thinking about when we're talking about technology and kids learning.
I can jump in to answer a few quick questions. One is wondering if you saw any interesting trend in data among the English and second language students. We didn't. It's not really our primary interest. However, in both the reading interventions and the math interventions, we did provide the Spanish version and also English version to children, to families who are comfortable with the language. So we accommodate their need, but we didn't like really focus on the ESL student subsample.
Yeah, so we overall we find no difference in the treatment effects, as Noah was saying. So yeah, that's for the literacy as well. So yeah.
Yeah, right. Mhm. And another one is for reading and math material increasing difficulty, or they at the constant level of aptitude. For the math material, we did not intentionally build in the difficult levels. However, among the 4 apps we selected, they all have increasing difficulties in their own design. And I believe it's a relatively common feature among the math learning apps. And I'll defer to Rohan to see the reading apps.
Yeah, no, for reading it was just, I mean, we had our built-in, Caper app, so that was really that. We didn't have different types.
Michelle, there's an interesting question here about what school districts or other community-based organizations are doing. And I think the question means, how are they using ed tech? That seems like a nice lead up to our new project. Do you want to say a few words about that and how we're going to try to answer that question?
Yeah, sure. So the presentation today focused on tech for learning at home. So I want to just distinguish between ed tech adoption for classroom curricula versus what we were talking about in today's presentation. And I think at least for preschool through the early elementary years, we don't seem to know a lot about what schools are doing in terms of adoption of home-based learning tech. And so that means the adoption of just devices loaded with learning platforms and apps for kids to take home. Our prior is that that's not really happening much in low-income schools, but that's part of the reason why we're excited to do this large-scale survey of schools and districts across the country to really have a better understanding of the landscape. And then that's to address sort of what the landscape is structurally, and then also to better understand how educators and school leaders and decision makers think about adapting these take-home programs, and how teachers and schools influence kids' math learning and learning on digital technologies in general. So that's a question that we're looking to answer next.
Rowan, I see a question here about nudging versus nagging, and I think it's a perfect question.
Yeah, I actually just answered that I was just typing out a whole paragraph for that, but I just didn't know if we'd have time. But yeah, okay, I can answer.
We have a few minutes. Why don't you share? This is
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So so the question is about, in the graph that I showed, the one with messages was a little bit lower, and the question is, was that significantly lower? So one type of messages that we sent was goal setting. So that's where they got feedback on how much they read and then a new goal each week. For that, it was slightly lower, but there was no significant difference. So we just interpret that as noise in the data, right? That there's not a difference in the final test score between getting goal setting messages or not getting any messages at all. But there was another group, which wasn't the focus here, but there is another paper we have called Nudging or Nagging. And that group just got reminder messages, not the goal setting, not the feedback, but just reminder messages to use the app. And their score was actually significantly lower than the group that got no messages at all. So there's definitely another side to this, which even in general, thinking about the different types of technology and not everything is created the same. So even within the same technology, different types of messaging that might be built in for various apps might be something to consider as well. And not enough messaging might mean that parents forget about it, but too much might actually annoy them and might make them use it even less, right? So that's definitely something to explore, and we shouldn't treat it as one size fits all. If one message is good, then 20 messages are good. It shouldn't be very linear thinking like that. But yeah, so I can certainly send the paper if anyone's interested in looking at those results in more details. Feel free to send me an email.
Michelle, maybe we should take one more question, and it could be something you could wrap us up with, which is about how we're going to share our findings with our community partners and tech companies.
Yeah, I think so. We're hoping to do more sharing of presentations like this in a variety of formats. We are, as we're actually right now planning to create our own technology tool for parent-child to promote parent-child conversations, which I mentioned via Chat to Learn. We're looking to partner with more tech companies and share these findings widely with tech companies. That's a good point about sharing with the larger tech companies. I think we are hoping to do more media pieces and disseminate our work widely in different channels. We're also working on, obviously, publication of the About Time results, and the CAPER results are also, the CAPER paper is also under review. So lots of different things in the works for sharing out our findings. And then we're happy to talk to anyone who has additional questions or wants to discuss future collaborations, or has new ideas to bring that we didn't cover today. So thank you everyone for joining us, and we hope to see you at the next one.
Yes, let me extend my thanks to everyone. Thanks for a great turnout. Thanks for so many interesting questions. And as Michelle said, we are always open to new ideas. We have a big lab with lots of different roles to fill, and always super happy to continue these conversations offline. So we are easy to find via email, and we look forward to hearing from you and to seeing everybody soon. So I will say goodbye. Goodbye and thank you. Have a great day, everybody.